So what is the slope? The slope is 2. Now, if I have something like this and I want to get my marginal cost, I say marginal cost is what? Changes in TC over changes in Q. When you have a table, you have your TC, you have your quantity, you have your variable cost, and you want to get your marginal cost, just find the difference between the current cost and the what? Initial cost, the current quantity and the what? Initial quantity to get your what? Marginal cost. But when you have a cost function, what's the cost function? Relation between your cost and what? Quantity. So your cost function is 10 plus 2q. To get our MC, we have to what? Introduce what's called differential calculus, which is what? The C, the Q. That is changes in C over what? Changes in Q. Now, if you have something like this, this is 10. 10 is a what? Is a fixed cost, and fixed cost is a constant. So if you have an equation like this, what is the derivative of this constant? That is what? 0. Right? So this is 0 plus 2q. When you have a linear function, derivative is the what? Coefficient of the independent variable, which is 2. So plus 2. So our MC equals what? 2. Another thing is, apart from this normal condition I gave you, that is when you have a linear cost function, your MC is equals to what? The slope of the linear. Don't forget, in fact, MC itself is a slope, right? And we can also call MC TC what? Complement. Yes. If I say find TC complement, what do I mean by find TC complement? It simply means find what? MC. Find MC. Or if I say find function of Q, function of what? Of Q. The function of Q simply means find our what? MC. TC complement also means find our what? MC. So our MC is what? Is 2. Now you see, in this cost function, you see these 2 here, it represents our average variable cost. We are still going to talk about the average variable cost. We are still going to talk about that. But if you have a linear cost function, your MC, your marginal cost, is always equal to your what? Your average variable cost. MC is equal to average variable cost whenever our cost function is what? Linear. And remember that when you have your cost function like this, it is a what? A short-run cost. A short-run cost. Why? Because it has what? It has fixed cost. It has a constant. A short-run cost function must have a what? A constant. So now let us represent our marginal cost in a graph. Our marginal cost. So the graph for our marginal cost is very simple. Very simple. So we have something like this. Now, this is our what? Our marginal cost. So our marginal cost shows the what? The increment of the total cost as a result of the what? As a result of the what? Changes in quantity. Are you getting it now? So when we have our marginal cost and our average cost, they are relationship between our marginal cost and our what? Our average cost. Yes. But let's start with the first and the most important relationship between both. Yes, marginal cost and average cost. Now remember that for your average cost, we have something like this, right? So we look at the minimum point of the what? Of the average cost. Now to maximize profits, you need your what? Your average cost and your what? Your marginal cost. But you see your marginal cost, we can't use the marginal cost independently without using the other marginal opposite, which is called the marginal revenue. So before we look at revenue as a concept, let us look at the relationship between cost and what? Average cost and marginal cost. Now for a firm, you make sure that your average cost is at minimum, right? So when the average cost is at minimum, you have your marginal cost. Now if I have my marginal cost, when I'm integrating my marginal cost and my average cost, when I integrate both together, my marginal cost must touch or must intersect my average cost at the minimum point. At the what? Minimum point. Let me draw it in a clearer view. So we have our what? Our These are what? Our average cost, right? Then we have our marginal cost. So when you are having your marginal cost should always cut your what? Your average cost at the minimum point. So the point, well, they can ask that at what point is MC equals what? AC. MC is equals to MC when AC is at what? Minimum. MC equals to AC when what? AC is at what? Minimum. Remember that the marginal cost we cut the average cost at the lowest point of the what? Average cost. Now that's the first thing you need to know. Average cost and marginal cost are equal whenever what? So this is the integration of what? AC and what? MC, where they are both equal. At what point? At the what? The minimum point of the what? Average cost for profit what? Maximization. Do you get that now? Now, the two other relationship between MC and AC is from the graph. You need to look at the graph and show that, okay, at what point is marginal cost greater than what? Average cost. At what point is marginal cost greater than average cost? So let us look at the graph. Where is marginal cost greater than average cost? This is marginal cost. This is average cost. So which one is greater? Which one is greater? At what point is the marginal cost greater than average cost? Or they can say at what point is the marginal cost above average cost? Now if marginal cost is greater than average cost, it simply means it is above it. So at this point where your average cost is increasing, so whenever our average cost is increasing, you can see the marginal cost is above it, right? So at the point where MC is greater than AC, it simply means AC is what? Increasing. AC is what? Increasing. At the point where MC is greater than AC, AC is what? Increasing. Then at the point where MC is what? Lesser than what? AC. What happened to AC? Now at the point where MC is lesser, right? Lesser than AC. Now which one is lesser? MC is lesser, right? This MC, this is AC. So at the point where MC is greater than AC, it simply means AC is what? Is reducing. So AC at this point is what? Decreasing. That's the two other relationship between marginal cost and average cost. Whenever average cost is increasing, the marginal cost is always greater than the average cost. Whenever average cost is reducing or decreasing, the marginal cost is always what? Lesser than average what? Cost. But whenever marginal average cost is equals to what? Minimum. Is at minimum for profit maximization, then the marginal cost and the average cost will intersect. So there will be what? Equilibrium between marginal cost and average cost at the minimum point of the what? Of the average cost. So that is for our average cost and our what? Marginal cost. So far we have been able to discuss our what? Fixed cost, our variable cost, our total cost, our average what? Total cost, our and our what? Marginal cost. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it remains two other cost concepts. So these, they are very, very easy. So we have we have the fixed cost and the variable cost. So for fixed cost and the variable cost, the per unit of fixed cost, now let's come back to fixed and variable cost. This is fixed cost, Abi, and this variable cost. Now, the per unit of what? Of this fixed cost is equal to our what? Average fixed cost. The per unit of variable cost is equal to our what? Average variable what? Cost. Now, what do I mean by the per unit of fixed cost? When we have fixed cost, I said rent on land is a fixed cost, right? So let's assume you are paying rent for like 5 land to produce. So when you pay rent for 5 land, different land for your production. Now, the total money you spend on this 5 land, let's assume you pay a sum of 10 million naira as rent annually for the 5 land you are using for your production. So this 10 million naira is your what? Your total cost. Remember that for fixed cost, we only deal with fixed factors of what? Production. Now, the money you are paying as rentage for a single land is your what? Average fixed cost. So your average fixed cost is our what? Our fixed cost, or our total fixed cost divided by our what? Unit of output. And we can also say our average fixed cost from the formula will now be what? Don't forget FC equals what? TC minus what? VC. So AFC will now be what? ATC minus what? AVC. That is our what? Average fixed cost. So for our variable cost also, let's use labor as a variable factor. So when you want to increase your scale of production, you want to employ more human resources. So the amount of money you give to each labor as in form of wages is called our what? Average variable what? Cost. It may not be only labor, it may be raw material, it may be other, variable factors of production. So our average variable cost will now give us our what? Our variable cost over our what? Quantity. And remember that our slope equals what? MC. So our MC here is equals to what? ABC. Whenever we have what? A linear cost function. So that means these three with our average variable cost, we multiply our what? Our Q. Remember, average variable cost multiplied by Q, we give what? VC. So this three is our average variable cost, while this is the quantity to get your what? Your total variable what? Cost. Total variable cost. So for our average fixed cost, now let's come back to our average fixed cost. Remember I told you that anytime you have your fixed cost as, let's say, 500 naira as your fixed cost, your quantity being produced, you produce 20 units. So if you have 500 naira as fixed cost and you produce 20 units, are you getting it now? If your quantity now what? Increases from 20 units to what? To, let's say, 25 units. If your quantity increases to 25 units, what will be the effect on our fixed cost? The effect on our fixed cost is that it has no effect on fixed cost. The 500 naira that is spent to produce 20 units, even as the quantity increases to 25 units, you are still going to spend the same amount of what? Money. However, in the case of average fixed cost, it is not the same. Our average fixed cost, the law of our average fixed cost is that as our quantity increases, the average fixed cost will continue to fall immediately as the quantity what? Increases. Unlike your fixed cost that remain constant if your quantity either increase or decrease. But in this case, once your Q increases, your average fixed cost must fall. That is the law. As average fixed cost is what? Is falling, it is because the quantity of goods and services that is being produced is what? Increasing. So if we want to show this mathematically to prove our what? Our theory, I will now say, okay, at the initial quantity, what is our average fixed cost? Our average fixed cost at the initial quantity is what? 500, which is FC, over what? 20, which is what? Our quantity. So our average fixed cost will give us what? That will give us 25. So we are spending what? 25 on what? On one fixed cost. Now, if the quantity increases, I want to see if it is going to back up what I said about our average fixed cost. That is, it will continue to fall as quantity what? Increases. So our new average fixed cost when quantity has increased will now be what? 500 over what? 25. So 25 divided by what? 500 divided by what? 25 will give us what? 20. So that will give us 20. So what do you notice? The average fixed cost has reduced from 25 naira to 20 naira. Why? quantity has what? Increased. If quantity increase again, your average fixed cost must what? Must fall. So that is how we explain our average fixed cost. So let me quickly show the graph for our average fixed cost and our what? Variable cost. How do we draw our average fixed cost? Your average fixed cost is not in T shape like your fixed cost. The shape of our average fixed cost is hyperbolical. Is what? Hyperbolical. You will see something like this. Now it must show that immediately quantity increases, what happens? The cost begins to what? To fall. The cost begins to what? To fall. So as quantity increases, cost begins to what? Begins to fall. So this is our what? Our average fixed cost. That's the graph for our average fixed cost. Therefore, our average variable cost. So our average variable cost is just like our what? Average total cost in U shape, but there's a difference between both. Now this is our average variable cost. Your average variable cost is more flattened, or is more steeper than your average total cost. You know, if this is the cost axis and this is the quantity axis, right? So your cost, you can see. Now what does it imply? It simply means the proportion of cost changes to what? Quantity changes. It's lesser than the proportion of your what? Your average total cost changes to your quantity changes. So here you can see that this one is what? Is greater than what? Than this. Are you getting it now? Because this one, there is a combination of what? Average what? Fixed cost to your what? Average variable cost. So if I want to integrate both together, I will have, so this is my average total cost, must be greater than my what? My average what? Variable cost. Right? So these are my 7 cost concepts. We want to look at what I call the short run cost and the long run cost, because I'll be talking about short run and long run. So we need to have an understanding of this short run and long run. Now you see, a cost that is incurred or spent by a firm in the short run production period is what we call short run cost. The one that is spent by a firm in the long run production period is what we call long run cost. Now, what's the difference between short run and long run? Short run simply means at present. Long run means in the future. So in the short run, we need to understand that when a producer is in the short run, because the short run, in theory of course, we have short run. In market structure, we have the short run. But the cost here, the short run here is different from the one in market structure. Now, this one has to do with what? Variability of input. Variability of input. So we say a short run cost is the cost that is spent during the period in which a firm cannot vary all its productive inputs. In a nutshell, a short run cost simply means money incurred when factors of production are divided into what? Fixed and what? And variable. A short run period is a period where at least one factor of production is what? Is fixed. In the short run, land will remain fixed. So not all factors are variable. It is not sufficient for a firm to vary all its productive what? Resources. So they are what? Fixed and they are what? Variable factor. That is why if we still come across the production function, in the short run, you will always see a constant which shows the what? The fixed cost. So if I have A plus what? B Q, this represents what? The short run cost. So this is a what? A short run cost. In a short run cost, you will always see a what? A constant, which simply means it is not what? Variable. So short run cost simply means what? Some factors of production are variable, while some are what? Are fixed. So we have fixed factors and what? Variable factor. However, in the long run, all factors of production have now become what? Variable. So in the long run, all factors of production are variable. Are what? Variable. Including land itself. Land becomes a variable factor in the what? In the long run. So in our cost function, in the long run, our A equals what? 0, because A is a constant. So we don't have a fixed factor. All the fixed factors have become variable. So you have a C equals what? BQ. Are you getting it now? And you can have it in a non-linear form when you have what? B square. That is, if I say C equals 4Q square. Now this C equals 4Q square. The first thing you know is that this is not a linear what? Cost function. This is a quadratic cost function because the highest power of the what? Independent variable is what? Is 2. And at the same time, this cost function is called a long run cost function. A long run what? Cost function. Why? Because there is no what? Constant. There is no constant. Even if there is the constant is what? 0. So when you have your cost in this form, it simply means the cost is a what? Is a long run cost. Is a long run cost. So from this point now, if I'm to get my what? My marginal cost, since it is not linear, it cannot be the same as my what? Average variable cost. My marginal cost here will now be what? 2 multiplied by 4, as 2 times 4, then Q raised power 2 minus 1. So that's MC equals 8Q raised power 1, which is what? 8Q. So that is what? My marginal cost from this what? Function. So that's the difference between the what? The short run and the what? The long run. Note, in the short run, some factors of production are variable, some are fixed, but in the long run, all factors of production are what? Are variable. So when you see the cost that is represented in the form of a function, you can identify which one is short run and which one is what? Long run. Which one is linear and which one is what? Non-linear. Now, lastly, before we look at the calculation aspect, we need to understand what we mean by implicit and explicit cost. Implicit and explicit cost. So, very simple. Implicit means within. Explicit means what? Outside. So, as a producer, you incur both costs. When you incur, okay, let's start with explicit. It's not possible not to what? To obtain resources from outside. So, as a producer, you acquire resources from outside, you pay money. Now, the money that is spent on the economic resources that are used by a producer in our production activities are called what? Explicit what? Cost. Money that are taken outside to obtain what? Resources. But for implicit are those costs that are what? Sourced within the what? The business. It's just like the opportunity cost of what? Spending or incurring cost within the what? The business. So in this case, money is not taken to external source. Explicit cost, you take money to external organization or firm so that you can acquire what? Raw materials, you can acquire the resources for your production. But implicit cost, the resources you are what? Using are the costs that are what? Are sourced within. In fact, a firm's time and effort are also regarded as cost. But this time and effort are within the what? The business. So they are what? Implicit what? Implicit cost. Let's give an illustration. I am a producer. So let's assume I produce plantain chips. So let's assume I produce what? Plantain chips. Now, to produce plantain chips, I need to what? To acquire plantain, right? Now, I have to buy plantain, and I'll take money outside. I'll get the plantain. The plantain is a resource that is obtained from external source. I pay money. The money I'm paying out is by what? Explicit cost. Now, just know that any money you are paying outside the business, you are giving it out as a form of cost incurred, what? Explicit cost. Now, there are some costs that I will incur what? Internally. Now let's assume that you know that to produce a plantain chips, I need what? I need a groundnut oil, right? So instead of buying the groundnut oil outside, in my own family, I can use our own groundnut oil to what? To produce. Since I'm not taking the money outside, and this groundnut oil, there is a particular cost that is not visible which has been incurred on this groundnut oil because it is added to the plantain chips. Such cost is called what? Implicit what? Implicit cost. Or if it is a large scale production and I have people that work for me, maybe because we are family and they are not collecting money, you know, it is still an implicit cost. But if I'm to employ labor from outside and I'm paying money, they are what? Explicit cost. So that's just the difference between what? Implicit cost and what? Explicit cost, right? So let's quickly solve few questions on theory, on cost concept, and that will be the final note. Now let us take a look at these 5 questions. So we have 5 questions on the board and we are going to solve them one after the other. So there are questions under the cost function, and we are also trying to get each cost concept depending on the questions we have. So let's start with the first question. Now the first question says, given that the fixed and variable cost of a firm are $20 and $35 respectively, what is the average cost of producing 5 units? What is the average cost of producing 5 units? So the solution to the first question, we want to get the average cost of producing 5 units. What's our average cost? Our average cost is what? Our total cost over our what? Our quantity, our output. And we can also say our average cost equals our what? Our average fixed cost plus our what? Average variable what? Cost. I'm going to be using the two to get our answer. So our average cost is our total cost. Now what is our total cost? Our total cost is what? Now let's bring out our total cost. Our total cost is our what? Fixed cost plus our what? Variable cost. Because we are not given our total cost, and we know that the formula for our total cost is our what? Fixed cost plus our variable cost. So divided by what? Our quantity. So what's our fixed cost? Our fixed cost is $20. Then plus our variable cost, which is what? $35 what? Dollar. Over. Now they said respectively, what is the average cost of producing 5 units? So the 5 units is our quantity. So divide by what? By 5. And that will give us what? This plus this, we are going to have what? $55. So divided by what? By 5 units. So our average cost is going to be what? $11 what? Dollar. So the average cost of producing 5 units is what? $11. Now, if we want to use this formula, we are still going to get what? $11. Let's write our average fixed cost out. What's our average fixed cost? Our average fixed cost is our what? Fixed cost divided by our what? Quantity, right? So our fixed cost from this question is $20. So $20 divided by what? By 5. Will give us what? This will give us $4. Then our average variable cost is our what? Variable cost divided by our quantity. What our variable cost? Our variable cost is what? $35 divided by 5, and that will give us what? $7. So that means our average fixed cost plus our average variable cost is going to give us what? Our average variable cost? Sorry, what's our average fixed cost? Our average fixed cost is $4, so we have $4 plus $7, and that will give us what? $11. So irrespective of the formula we are using, we are going to get the same value for our average what? Cost. Now the second question says, if a cost function is given as C equals 100 plus 4Q, determine the marginal cost and average variable cost. If 50 units were produced, determine the what? The marginal cost. Now, we don't need to know the quantity before we can determine our what? Marginal cost. Remember I told you that when you have a cost function in this form, you can easily obtain your what? Your marginal cost. So what's our marginal cost here? Our marginal cost is what? Changes in what? Total cost over what? Changes in Q. That's the CDQ. So our marginal cost is going to give us what? What's the derivative of what? Of this C with respect to Q? That is what? 4. Because marginal cost is the slope of the total cost. So what's the slope in this function? It is what? 4. Then what's our average variable cost? So we want to get our average variable cost. Our average variable cost is our what? Our variable cost divided by our what? Our quantity, right? So our average variable cost is our variable cost over our quantity. What is our variable cost? If you look at this cost function, remember I told you that this one that is a constant is our what? Our fixed cost. This one is our what? Variable cost. So what's our variable cost here? Our variable cost is what? 4Q, right? Then divided by what? Divided by Q. Divided by Q. So Q will cancel Q. Our average variable cost is what? 4. So that means our average variable cost is the same thing as our what? Marginal cost. When we have a linear short run cost function. Then the next question, C, says given that C, which is our cost, equals 6Q squared, what is the average variable cost of producing 25 units? What is the average variable cost of producing 25 what? Units? So the average variable cost of producing 25 units, that's our VC divided by our what? Our Q. So in this case, this is a what? A long run what? Cost function. No constant. So since there is no constant, there is no fixed cost. Since there is no fixed cost, we only have our what? Variable cost. So the whole of this is our what? Variable cost. So the whole of this is our variable cost. So what's our variable cost? That's our what? 6Q squared over what? Over Q, right? So here we have what? This cancel this, we left with what? 1. So that's what? 6Q. So our average variable cost will now give us what? 6Q. What is Q? Q from this question is 25 units. So we have what? 6 times 20 what? 25. So our average variable cost is what? 25 multiplied by 6. This will give us 30 as 0, keep 3. This will give us 12 plus this, that's what? 15. So this is what? 150. 150. We are not giving the correction. So this is 150. So our average variable cost is what? 150. Then the fourth question. The fourth question, I think I have to clean this place. The first question says, a firm's short-run total cost function is given as STC. What's STC? Short-run total cost equals 100 plus 5Q plus Q squared. Now it says, at what quantity does the short-run marginal cost equal the short-run average total cost? At what point? At what quantity? So I say MC equals what? Average what? Total cost, right? Now, I told you that when MC equals the average total cost, the average total cost must be at what? Minimum. So what do we need to do? We need to what? To minimize the what? The total cost, right? So let's find our MC and let's find our what? Average total cost. So when we get our MC and our average total cost, then we now equate together. When we equate together, we'll be able to get our quantity at which they are both what? Equal. So let's write the total cost function. So the cost function is expressed as what? 100 plus 5Q, then plus what? Q squared. So to get our marginal cost, which is C complement, our marginal cost equals what? This is a constant. So this one is 0. plus 5q. What's 5q? That's what? 5, right? Then plus what? This will give us what? 2q. How did I get this? Don't forget that our MC, when we have what? A cost function, is what? Derivative of what? C in respect to what? To q. So when we find derivative of this, we are going to get what? MC equals what? 5 plus what? 2q. 5 plus 2q. You have gotten our MC. Then we need to get our what? Our average total cost. What's our average total cost? That's our what? Total cost divided by our what? Quantity. Now, what's our total cost here? Our total cost is 100 plus 5q plus what? Q square. So we have to what? Divide everything by what? By q. So we are going to have what? 100 divided by q plus this cancel this. So you have 5. Then plus what? This what? Q. So it remains what? 1q. So q in q square will be left with what? 1q. Now these are what? Average total cost function. These are marginal cost function. So what do? We will now what? Equate both. We equate both to show that marginal cost equals what? Equals average what? Total cost. So let's equate both functions. That will give us what? 5 plus 2q equals 100 over what? Q plus 5 plus what? Q, right? So let's collect like times. So collecting like times, we are going to have what? 5 minus 5, then equals 100 over Q. This will come here, that will be what? Minus 2Q. So 5 minus 5 is what? 0. 100 then over q minus 2q. So bring 2q to this side again. Bring minus 2q to this side. We are going to have what? 2q equals 100 over what? Over q. So this will give us now 5. We cancel 5 because we want to collect like times. When 5 comes here, it becomes what? Minus 5. So 5 minus 5 becomes 0. So we have what? 2q. Let's bring this here. Minus what? Minus q equals 100 over what? Over q. So 2q minus q will give us q, right? Because 2q minus 1q will give us q. So we have 100 divided by what? Q. Then we cross multiply. So this will give us q squared equals what? 100. Now note, we are looking for q, not q squared. So we have to what? Find the square root of both sides. So this cancel this. So that means our q will be equals what? Square root of 100, which is what? 10. Now what does it mean? The short run marginal cost equals to the short run average total cost at 10 units of what? Of output. At 10 units of output. Now for the last question, let's read it out. It says if a firm's average variable cost is given by AVC equals 2 plus 3Q. So we have AVC equals 2 plus 3Q. Then it says, what is the total variable cost when Q equals 4? What is the total variable cost when Q equals what? 4. Alright. But before that, let me quickly go back to the previous question. Now from this, you know that since we have gotten our quantity as 10, we can get our MC and we can get our what? ATC. So in case they say you find your what? Your MC and your ATC when giving something like this, we have to what? We have to equate what? MC to what? ATC right now. Get that now? So let's go back to the current question. So we want to find our what? Our total variable cost. Alright. Now, what's our total variable cost? Our total variable cost is our what? Average variable cost multiplied by our what? Quantity. So our average variable cost is what? 2 plus 3Q. Now, what is the value for Q? The value for Q is what? Is 4. So we have 4. So our average variable cost equals 2 plus 3 times 4, 12. That's what? 14. So that means our total variable cost will now be what? Average variable cost, which is what? 14 multiplied by quantity. What is the quantity? The quantity is what? 4. So TVC equals what? 14. The multiplied by what? Multiplied by 4. This is 16. 2, right? This 1 times 4, 4. Then plus 2, that's what? 66. 14 times 4. So that's what? 56. So our total variable cost is what? 50 what? 56. So that is that. That is what we have under the theory of cost. So thank you for your time.